let's go, I guess. So as roll call is happening in the chat box, we need a minute taker from the membership for this meeting. We are recording it, so you will have that to refer back to. But yes, we need somebody to do minutes if somebody is willing.
Hey, Amy, this is Becky. I can take the minutes if you want.
That would be marvelous. Thank you, Becky.
No problem.
Okay, so moving to the next step is MSC staff introductions. I am Amy Marchwick. I am the Montana Shared Catalog Lead System Administrator, and the rest of the MSC team are going to introduce themselves.
Mel Carroll, I'm a system administrator as well, and I'm based out of Lolo.
I'm Melody Carley. I'm based out of Petbank, and I'm also a system administrator.
I'm Kylie McGregor. I'm the MSC trainer, and I'm based out of Belgrade.
And I'm Laura Treader, system admin, and I'm based out of Helena.
And I completely forgot to say where I am. I am also in Belgrade. I'm going to turn my video off because we've got things to show on the screen. But feel free to ask questions in the chat or raise your hand if you have questions. This is a meeting for you, the members, so we can, yes, please ask questions. It's not a wait silently until the end. The first thing we have is the approval of the minutes from the fall 2024 meeting that was on the Aspen events page. Do we have any needed corrections? Actually, do I need a motion? I think we may need a motion before we can discuss them. So we have a motion to approve the fall 2024 minutes.
It's Deb Westrom. I'll make the motion to approve the fall minutes. Hellgate Elementary.
Thank you, Deb. We have a second.
Jennifer Ball, Stillwater, I second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded to approve the fall 2024 minutes. Did anybody see anything that needed corrections? Do we have any questions? Or any discussion about those minutes? Okay, I'm not hearing any discussion or seeing anything in chat. So all in favor of approving the 2024 fall MSC member meetings, please type aye or yes in the chat. Thank you. As they are voting, for those of you who have come in a little bit later, if you will type your name and library into the chat for our roll call. Anybody opposed to approving the member minutes, meeting minutes, please say no in the chat. Okay, I am not seeing any opposal to the member minutes, so the fall membership meeting minutes have been approved. So moving on to the MSC updates, we have sort of several things to talk about. The first thing I wanted to give everybody an update on is the MSC contract. As you know, as you probably know, we amended our bylaws last year. We've made some changes to various groups as part of the MSC. We don't have an executive board anymore, so we needed to amend our bylaws to take those things out. There are several things like that that are referenced in our contract as well, the contract that you members sign when you join the MSC. And the contract was last updated in 2017. So we've had quite a few changes since then. And as we were reviewing that contract and other agreements, you know, the sharing groups and things that we have with other MSL staff as part of working up a draft, we have decided, we, the MSC team, but also Sean Anderson, the MSL contracts officer, and Savannah, the Montana Library Network coordinator, we are going to be creating a new single MSL services contract that includes the MSC, OCLC group services, Montana Library to go, all of the various things that we provide that you can join as a member. There right now, they are all separate and in various stages of being revamped. So we're gonna simplify and consolidate those into a single overall contract that's very straightforward. We'll have sections for services with any specifics that need to be detailed. So you'll be signing contract between the library and MSL for services, and then whichever particular services your library is using will be listed in that. We think that will make it a lot easier to make sure that we, the MSL, are documenting and reviewing all of that paperwork that we need to have. And also will make it easier for us to send regular reminders about what everybody is signed up for or is using, things like that. So it'll be easier for you and us to track these documents. It'll be just one sort of overall document. We are, when I say we, the MSL, we're in sort of the beginning stages of drafting that document. Once the new contract is done, we have to show it to the lawyers at the state and things. I think that we, the MSC, will probably want to revisit our bylaws again. There are things in the current contract that are probably more appropriate for the bylaws. So after we have updated the contract, we can see what was in there that we still feel needs to be, I don't know, listed as an official document, and we can move those over to the bylaws. So that is likely going to be ready for our fall member meeting for everybody to look at and get a new copy of. But are there any questions about any of that right now?
Amy, this is Deb Westrom. Is that something then that, like, as a school, the school library, is that something that our district will get, or is that, I just need to know, like, what to be aware of to let people know that something new to sign is coming eventually?
I think on our current contract, usually what it happens is the library director or school librarian signs, and then it is also signed by the chair of the board of trustees or school superintendent or school principal, depending on how the school joined. So yeah, I think that will be probably similar in that the librarian will be signing it, but probably also somebody with authority over the school at large will need to sign. And we will give you guys lots of notice about when that's coming out, and you'll be able to see it ahead of time.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, the next item on our update list is the item type field in workflows. We know that field can be, well, just looking at it, it doesn't look confusing, but the name is item type. That's the name of the field. And we do have actual physical formats in there and did for years. That was what we started putting in there: book, DVD, CD, things like that. What that field actually does has nothing to do with the physical format of the item. It controls how items circulate, checkout length and limits, holds, renewals, fines, everything that how an item checks out or circulates or is available to patrons. So we've been slowly moving to new item types. We were calling them functional item types for the past 5 or 6 years that are named in accordance with what the field does. So they say things like 14-day, 7-day NH for 7-day no holds. This really streamlines on the back end the configuration for what they do and for when we're troubleshooting why your item isn't circulating like you expect it to do. But we think and hope that it also makes it easier for cataloging once your library switches over, because you don't need to have memorized what does book do? Does book check out the same as DVD? Does CD? You can just pick the one in your drop down that is how that item in your hand should circulate. If it's a 14-day thing, you put it 14-day. If it's 28-day, you put it 28-day. But we were still seeing confusion with the name item type. Functional item type is what we were calling it because that's what the functionality of the field does. But we recently came up with a better description. We think circulation type is a better name for that field because that's what it actually does. And so sometime this month, we've been doing some checking. We are going to be relabeling that field in workflows, in BCA, and we think in enterprise to explain, to have it be labeled circulation type because that's what it actually does. We are still helping libraries transition to using those new circulation types. We've got a lot of libraries that have switched over, but also many libraries that have not. If you are ready to make the change, you can open a ticket. It's very low. The majority of the work in changing over is on the MSC team side. We will look at your collection. We look at the way your items are already circulating. We will send you a spreadsheet that maps the old field options to the new field options, and then we will batch change those for you. So the only things that will be on your side is just getting used to using them. So we do encourage you to do that. At some point, we will, as we do more system cleanup and streamlining of the configuration, we will be moving everybody to the new circulation types. I have to remember to call them that until the labels are changed. So at some point, everybody will need to move. If you're ready before we do that final push, let us know by opening a ticket. It can be, we're pretty flexible on the scheduling. If you want to open a ticket and say, let's do this in 2 months when summer reading program is over, or let's do it over Christmas break or whatever, we can set up and do the planning work and then make the actual change when you're ready for that. Any questions about that? Yes, so there's comments in the chat that it's a great idea, that we like that, and it also makes it clear for patrons who are searching for items online. We agree with all of those things, that it's, it sometimes can be confusing when it's got a label that doesn't quite match what it is, or they might show them where, they think that's telling them where it is on the shelf, but it's really how it circulates. So it'll be more clear if they see it and they can see, oh, I can check that out for 28 days. We need to do a little bit of testing, but it will happen this month, and we will let you know in the gov delivery as we roll that change out. So it'll be in May. We just don't have the actual day that we'll push the change yet. There was a question for when we anticipate it'll be relabeled. Yeah, so it'll be circ type. Probably in workflows, it'll say circ type because there's not a ton of space in there. I don't know. I don't know that we will spell out fully circulation type anywhere, just because circulation is kind of a long word. But yeah, so it'll be circ type instead of item type, because that's not the field control circulation. Any other? So circ type will replace item type, which is the field. Oh, I don't have workflows open directly under the barcode field. item category 1 is the actual place where the physical format goes for statistics and things like that. So item cat 1 will be staying the same. Item type will change to cert type. Then I think our next update is from Mel.
Yep. So just a real quick enterprise update for all of you. If you saw today's Gov delivery, we do have series linking now available on the site, which is very exciting. It's not perfect. It's based on what's in the MARC record, but it's better than it was, and it's not gonna clog things up too much with a volume 1 on the end. You'll actually be able to search Harry Potter and see Harry Potter results. The other update that we have coming down is we are changing what the generic cover art looks like. So as it stands right now, it's just a square with a little blue update kind of logo in the bottom. That's going to go away for the most part. What it's going to be replaced by is, Kylie has it up on the screen right now, is they're going to be more kind of tailored to what the format of the item is. So you'll see the top couple results. These are our continuing resources or periodicals. They'll have more of a magazine type look to them. If you scroll down a little bit, Kylie, there's just a book for book. I'm not going to have her go too far down the rabbit hole, but DVDs will look like a DVD with a CD case and so forth. We anticipate this change rolling out within the next couple of weeks. It's not perfect. Again, it's based off of the format fields in the MARC record. So if you notice that your DVD has a picture of a book and it's a DVD, that means there's something wrong in the MARC record that needs to be fixed. That's how that image will get updated. Are there any questions with that?
There was one person who says they can't see Kylie's screen. I can see it. Is there anyone else who can't see it? Do we have where it's doing something weird? But yeah, she is sharing. It's basically Enterprise with the picture of the book on it right now. But also there were some comments before that about the series linking. We're very excited.
Yes, it's
we've wanted it for a long time.
Yeah, one of the things I've really been trying to get working for a while, and it finally is now. So kits or equipment, I don't have that offhand, Crystal. Well, maybe I do. I say that. Kits or equipment, it's not going to be great. I mean, it's hard to kind of boil those things down into what they're going to be. There's a chance that it could come through as something just generic, which was that standard older format. Same thing with like library things. We don't have a great icon for that right now. I'm investigating, and hopefully as time goes on, we'll have better options. Well, we're not gonna be customizing the library of things. It's gonna be just like a standard generic image. Unfortunately, Enterprise does not make looking at or fixing cover art very, very easy. We're hoping in the next instance that it will be. I've included a link in the chat to this test profile. If you wanted to kind of poke around and see what some of the icons are going to be, you can use the facets on the left side from an open search and kind of poke around.
Yeah. And this generally is the minority of items, because synthetics that SirsiDynix uses for cover art, usually for most books at least, it has cover art, but obviously things like your kits or your equipment or some of the historical societies specific things or your various library of things, they don't have cover art. So this is where they're going to come into play more often.
Yeah, it's not the best upgrade, but it is an upgrade.
Yeah, it's just a little bit nicer than the sort of same box for everything, because at least then you'll know what it is.
Generally, yeah.
Any other questions or comments about those two enterprise changes? All right, Laura, you want to go ahead with the next update?
You bet. I want to talk just kind of briefly about the Content Management Committee, or we often refer to them as the CMC. We met most recently March 13th. And in the past, that committee has met 2 times per year in the spring and the fall. And since 2020, those meetings have been online, typically run 3 to 4 hours. It's worked well, but as everything is kind of evolves, and we're going to try out meeting on a regular schedule, shorter meetings, quarterly. This is going to make it easier for scheduling for us, for the members to kind of block off their calendars, and we hope open up some participation for other interested MSC members to attend. We can all kind of know when the meetings are going to be more in advance. And it'll only be an hour instead of having to block off your whole afternoon. So for the rest of 2025, we have it scheduled. We're going to do, it's the first Wednesday of the month on a quarterly basis. So Wednesday, June 4th, September 3rd, and December 3rd. And they're going to be from 11 to 12. And it's a small group, so we're going to try it. And if we need to tweak it a little bit in 2026, we will. But we're feeling optimistic about this, and we won't have to save things up quite as much. And it'll just be easier for us to get together and kind of work through things as they come up. One other thing, I'll just say, so our June 3rd meeting, the agenda isn't set yet, but it is coming up pretty soon, less than a month now. And I can say one thing that for sure we're going to talk about are cataloging guidelines and attachment rules for literacy kits, and get started on the same for some other library of things items. We've had some good guidelines for some type of equipment, hotspots and whatnot, but we really haven't kind of revisited those and updated our guidelines to include these folding tables and other things that you all are adding. So we're going to be happy to get going on that. We have some of the other discussion items from this March 13th meeting. Melody is going to be talking about, and they were just kind of more ongoing updates. But the thing I want to just quickly share too is the discussion we had about system match points. The match points, for those of you who aren't sure, are the specific mark tags that we designate in the system to look at when bib records are being imported, to determine if there's an existing bib already in the catalog or if a new bib needs to be brought in. If a bib record is already in the catalog, it will be overlaid with an updated bib record. Usually this is great, and the settings work for us well, but we have noticed and have seen reported an increase in the number of kind of inadvertent overlays of records, particularly for series and manga. So our solution is to update our match points. So we're looking at updating the SmartPort Biblo reports to match an OCLC number and remove the ISBN, LCCN, ISSN, or UPC. Those standard numbers were added some years ago to help reduce the number of duplicate bib records. But we've kind of come around to cleaning up duplicates is going to be an easier problem to fix than finding these inadvertent overlays. And also OCLC has, over the years, they've really improved their duplicate merging process. So we're expecting the number of duplicate records to be fewer than they were, less of an issue than it was in the past. We also met with, after discussing this with the CMC, we did meet with our SirsiDynix rep just to confirm this change, if there wasn't any sort of consequence that we really weren't thinking about. Got the green light, and we're going to implement this change this month as well, here in May. And we will confirm that via Gov Delivery as well. And sorry for the misspeaking on June 3rd or June 4th. It's the Wednesday, yes, June 4th for the CMC meeting. Any questions about the group or the SmartPort match points?
And you, the members, won't need to make any changes on the match points. We will be adjusting your SmartPort settings for you, unless you have otherwise customized things in your SmartPort settings, then you might not see it. And we'll probably send a reminder to check your properties on your computer to make sure that you get the updated settings.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Well, we'll update the back end. So if you're installing a new workflows or you have not messed with your SmartPort properties at all, it'll be updated. But in what we share via Gov Delivery and in our KB about SmartPort match points or properties, we'll walk you through how to double check what you've got on your computer and make sure it's as it should be.
And Laura did mention this, but just to reiterate, at the CMC meetings, any member librarian is welcome to attend those meetings. You can be part of the discussion. We like guests at that meeting.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And then there's a question in the chat about the SmartPort match points.
You can still search. Yeah. So Becky's asking if you search on ISBN and it just won't be a match. So that's correct. Yeah. So your SmartPort searching won't change at all. But when the system is just deciding if it's determining if it's going to overlay a record or bring it in, it will no longer see ISBN as that match point. And so like in series, so a series that, and many series that will have multiple ISBNs for any book in that whole entire series. When the ISBN is a match point, now you bring in another book with another book in that series, but it's matching on that shared record that includes all those multiple ones. So now you have a record, you had a record in the system that described the whole set, the whole series, and just got overlaid by book number 3 because the ISBN matched. And that's what has been a problem, and then goes into this circular overlaying, and now you're trying to overlay the overlay, and it gets really frustrating.
Yeah, so then there was another question about the ISBN numbers from the search, and as she just clarified, your searching won't change at all. What is changing is sort of the background thing that happens when you bring the record in, where it decides if it's gonna make a new record or overwrite one that exists on the system. So most of you don't notice that, and it's just going to work better, we hope.
Yeah.
Any other questions about that? Okay, moving on to our next little section of updates. We have just a few quick reminders. We send all of our regular updates through our Gov Delivery newsletter, through the MSC, we call it the MSC updates newsletter. We require at least one staff person at every library to be on that list, but you are more than welcome to have multiple. And in fact, we recommend that. As you know, we had a couple glitches earlier last month That's where we send notices if we know the system is having a problem. And then we send out, every other week, we send out news and changes to the system and notices. So things like that. So please make sure that at least somebody at your library is subscribed to that. And multiple people can be subscribed, because if you've seen it, you know, we put everything on there from meetings, cataloging things, to circulation things. It's not for any particular library position. We just have all of our news in one email. We also do keep an archive of the old emails in our knowledge base, and it's linked at the bottom of every newsletter. So if you're thinking they said something, or they wrote something 2 weeks ago and I can't remember what it was, you can click on that link in the bottom of the most recent one and we'll take you to the archive where you can see the previous notices. And in, I think, just the last Gov delivery, we talked, there was some information about system users, and we just wanted to reiterate that because it's a sort of a new thing. We've always had system users, which is what we call things like, you know, you're check it out for story time, or you place holds, or you check it out for repair or mending or relabeling. But we also use that term system user for the logins and for some other things. Like every library has an account, has a user that matches your policy name. So if you are the Bozeman Public Library in Bozeman in the system, there is a user with that Bozeman, and that is also a system user that is uses the system uses it for some backend functions. So we came up with 3 different names to make it more clear which of those things do which. So there are library logins, which is what you type into workflows when you log in. There are library accounts. Those are the ones I was just talking about, where it's a single user for each library that matches the name of your library policy and workflows. And then there are library process users, which are the things like missing, repair, story time, all of the various things, display, discard. And to make it easier to see what they are, we batch added a group ID to the ones that we can see and know about. They should all already have had user category 1 of system. Some of them did not. We batch updated that. But one of the reasons we realized we needed to clarify this is that the only ones that should be being used for checkouts or holds are those library process users. The other 2 did not previously prevent you from checking items out to them, but because they aren't quite the same as regular users, then you sometimes see odd behavior. They either do or don't show up on overdue lists. They have strange due dates. They do different things. So we will be changing the configuration so that the 2 types of system users that shouldn't have checkouts or holds will not be able to do checkouts or holds. And so that will be changing. We sent that out in the Gov delivery. I think we've talked to a couple libraries about switching some of their processes from one user to another. And also, I should say, if you have a user profile that is for your library staff, that, you know, they each have their own library staff account, but it's for checking things out just with staff privileges instead of regular patron privileges, you do not need to use that profile for these system users. If it's for some kind of a system thing, we do recommend that you get in touch with us and let us help you pick which profile it should have and make it a system user, because we exclude those system users from various things, and they are generally excluded from statistics because they're not, you know, check out to a patron. So it just works a little bit better if they are not using an actual patron profile. Yeah, so if you have any questions about any of those, please feel free to open a ticket or ask right now. But we did add the group ID to the ones we knew about, And we generally keep an eye to see if there are any that we have missed. So that will make it more clear. If it says library process in the group ID, you can check things out to it. If it says account, library account, or library login, those are special system things, special system users that you don't need to worry about. We do also sometimes get tickets from people saying, should this user hasn't been active, and they don't show activity the same way. So that, again, showing that they are system users will help clear up some of that confusion about those. Give it a second for people to type questions if they have any. And then our final sort of reminder is that for the school year, end of year, in previous years, we did sort of a survey or a poll form or a form for libraries to fill out their end of year due date things. We did not do a form this year. We want libraries to open a ticket because it turns out generally there ends up being a need for some back and forth just to get the details all worked out. And the form was not quite customizable enough for what each library needs. So if you are a school and you need end of year school dates, due dates, and you haven't yet opened a ticket, please do, or roll-ups if you want us to do a roll-up of your students from one grade to the next and remove whatever your graduating class is over the summer, we will do that too, but please open a ticket. All right. Got to find my agenda to see what order we are going in. Okay, so yes, so the next thing is the SirsiDynix products. We have this as an action item, but it does sort of tie into the budget and cost share, which is next. So I will talk about these two products first. We can talk about how that affects the budget and the cost share, and then make a decision about the whether you, the members, want to move forward with purchasing these items. So there was a memo on the event page explaining these products because they are both sort of back-end products. We don't have anything to show you, unfortunately. We do, as a team, recommend that you consider purchasing these two items. The first one is the Blue Cloud Analytics Private Suite add-on. Kylie, do you have the memo? Can you put that on the screen? Because then it has the, thank you. So then they can see the numbers while I'm talking. So this, we currently have BCA. You use that for your reports, many of you. We like BCA much better than Workflows reports. The formatting is great. The options are better. It's got great exports. You can have it emailed. This Private Suite add-on, which they used to call Private Intelligence Server, Cirsi changed the name on us, would move the MSC's BCA to sort of a separate, to a separate server, separate instance. Right now we share with many, many SirsiDynix customers. They can't see our data. We can't see their data, but we are on a server with a bunch of other people. So sometimes when it's running really slow or things like that, that is because we're not the only library or library consortium using on that server. So this private suite would move us, we would have better performance during regular use because only our librarians would be using the system. And we have a lot of librarians in our consortium. And so we run into some performance issues just because there are also thousands of others. So if it was just us on our server, it would run better. It also would give us more options on the back end of BCA for management and configuration. Right now, we don't have any access to the back end. So when, like, if your password needs to be changed or when we need to create a new user, actually, I'm not sure we'll still be able to create new users. But we have to ask Cirsi to do it, and then that goes through their case system, and sometimes it can take a while or there's confusion on their side about what is happening or what we're asking for, and so then it just takes a little bit longer. We would have more options and control there. We also would have better access for subscription and scheduling management. We can rerun subscriptions more easily if you have staff change or email changes. We can move subscriptions around from one patron to or from one librarian to another. So that would give us better access there. And then there are some other enhancements that are in development for that private suite that when they are released would be nice if we are on that private suite. One of them is there was a more friendly web interface with like more, I don't really know how to describe it. There was a screenshot that I could look and see if I could find it, but it just is a nicer front end for some parts of BCA where it's a little opaque sometimes now. There is a question in the chat about when we would be able to have more access to template creation or with, yeah, basically template creation. I am not sure.
So no. That comes down to how our logins are termed. Right now, we only have a limited amount of what they call creator and above leveled permissions, and we have unlimited reporter. So that going to the private suite doesn't change that level configuration.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Thank you, Mel, for having that information. The main issue is just that SirsiDynix charges more for the template creation logins, unfortunately. So yeah, so that is one of the products that we are recommending. That would be an annual cost of $11,964. It doesn't go up. That cost stays stable, and it would just be added to our annual invoice with SirsiDynix moving forward. I talked to our SirsiDynix account manager, and she has a couple other consortiums that have moved to this and like it quite a bit. She offered to put us in touch with them before we purchased it to actually push through a purchase to make sure that it would cover all of our needs. So we will probably have that meeting just to make sure that there's not some huge pitfall that would make this not work as well for us. But it does sound like for consortium customers of SirsiDynix that this works really well. Mostly because of their size. You know, we don't have one librarian logging into BCA. There's hundreds of us. So. The other product is even more back end. It's got a very unwieldy name of Unlimited Web Services Connectors and SIP license. We have an unlimited SIP license already. And what SIP is the protocol that third-party vendors use to talk to our system. So Overdrive for Montana Library to Go, Envisionware for many of your public access computers. There's that Envisionware scheduling software. Any of the other digital vendors, Access 360, Canopy, Hoopla, they all use this to connect to our system. Self-check machines use this to connect to our system to check things in and out. Hold lockers use this to connect to our system. Basically anything that needs to be able to check things in or out, place holds, checking our system to authenticate users is mostly what it does, and it can check things in and out to them. It's a very old protocol. All the ILS vendors are moving towards web services, and web services is a really generic thing, and they all just call their version of it web services. But what it does is it is an upgraded interface protocol to allow third-party vendors to talk to our system. The third-party vendors like all the new features and functions that it has, and so they want us to move. We are getting, like, Overdrive has reached out to several Montana libraries and told them, you should switch to web services. There's no cost. Please switch. And then those libraries email me or email Savannah, and we have to say, yes, there's no cost on the Overdrive side. SirsiDynix, where this would actually be implemented, has a cost. So we would be upgrading our license from unlimited SIP to unlimited web services and SIP. So we would not lose any functionality for the vendors or self-check machines that would be staying on the existing setup. But it would enable us to start using those products from vendors that are only available on the web services connections. We have several libraries that have already signed up with vendors that use SIP, but have additional functionality if they could switch to web services. Patron Point from SpringShare, I want to say Clio, the IL provider, there's at least one other one, and Overdrive. Overdrive would like to move, and many of our libraries are on that for Montana Library to Go. So on the back end, you wouldn't see this much unless you're using one of those services, but because it is very, very in the configuration size, it's not something you're going to see like in workflows. But we will need to make this change at some point. SIP is probably not going away anytime soon, but it will be probably less and less accepted by third-party vendors. So I see a question about the one-time additional cost. I'll answer that in just a second. The next question, Sora 2. Yes, so Sora is through Overdrive. So Sora currently uses SIP, and Overdrive would like to switch all of that to web services. One of the things that Overdrive is using as a promotional thing to get libraries to move over this is because they will be checking the back end of our system in a slightly different way. If a patron changes their barcode number, like they lose their card and they get a new barcode, that will not affect their Overdrive, their Montana Library to Go account any longer. Right now, either they switch it to a new account or you have to go in as the librarian and manually make that change for them on Overdrive's back end. That would no longer be a thing on web services because they would be checking a different part of our system, our database. And so they would know when the barcode changed and they would know that it was the same patron. So that's very nifty. The cost of this would be, it's a $36,000 cost. It would replace our current $20,000 unlimited SIP license. So it would be an extra $16,000 a year. There would be an additional one-time cost for new connectors. And what that means is each third-party vendor right now gets their own SIP connection. And we, the MSC team, build those connections. So we don't get charged by SirsiDynix to build those. That would, in web services, that remains the same. Any vendor needs a web service connection. So for Overdrive, we would build them one connection and then they would use it for everything, for Montana Library to Go, for Sora, etc. For Canopy, they would need a connection for Spring Share, Patron Point, it would need a connection, but it's just one per vendor. It's not one per library using that vendor. So it kind of be, it's just a one-time thing. And SirsiDynix builds those connections and charges us for them. I've talked to our salesperson there, and that cost is usually under $1,000. So for if a library is starting to use a new third-party vendor, and they are the first one, or they want to join with several other libraries that are switching or starting to use that vendor, we could pool that cost. The $1,000 for that one-time cost, we would generally not pass that along to the membership because not everybody would be using whatever service we were setting up on the new web service connector for that vendor. Let's see, question. So that was what the one-time additional cost. So like if we set up Overdrive, there would be one-time cost for that. If we set up Spring Share, Patron Point, there would be a one-time cost to set that up. And then any library that started using that would be able to use that without extra charges later on. The question is, are all Montana Library to Go libraries MSC libraries? And the answer to that is no. There are several libraries that are not in the MSC that are Montana Library to Go users, but their connection with Overdrive is separate from all. I mean, it's through whatever ILS they are using. So if their ILS offers web services, they would have to do that upgrading work on their side. There's a question about the grandfather in the third parties we already have. They will not grandfather in the third parties we already have because they're using SIP right now. If those third party vendors want to use web services, then somebody has to pay for that new connection. So yes, it would, if they want to switch over. So the Overdrive one, because it's so many libraries that are using it, I anticipate that we would cover that through MSL somehow. But most of our other SIP are 3 or 4, 10 or 15 libraries. So if those vendors want to move to web services, we would probably talk to those libraries, see if they wanted to make the jump, and then pool the cost between them. Any sense so question is, do you have any sense as to how the new connections or additional information fees look? Is this $1,000 or under per vendor? Yes. And is it something our schools would need to worry about? I would say probably not for schools, because Sora is the main thing that schools are using SIP for, and that would be covered with the Overdrive because that's the vendor who's doing it. So we would just include the Sora connection when we do the Overdrive so that the Montana Library to Go libraries can use that. Where it might come into play is if any of them schools are using, or public libraries, I don't know how many there are, using anything like EBSCO databases, where the patrons are logging in with their number and authenticating through our system. I have not heard anything that EBSCO is wanting to switch to web services, but we don't have a ton of libraries using EBSCO like that. So, and then Jackie is asking, should those $1,000 charges be budgeted into this cost share formula? It theoretically could be. The way we have done this historically for things that were needed by a single library, basically sort of custom work, is that single library paid for it. So, and that's how we've done it with these kind of SIP things in the past when there was add-on fees. We just bill the library directly for that extra cost. We don't build it into the cost share formula because it's not really a shared resource. There have been some situations where the first library that pays for it, that wants it, pays for it, and then all the other libraries kind of get it for free. That would be sort of how this works, unless a group of libraries decide to use it together and to share that, to pool that original cost. It's one of the things where it would feel a little problematic to build in about, $10,000 for 10 web services connectors into the annual cost share budget if only 3 or 4 libraries are going to benefit from those. So, the next question says, is there a large library in this meeting that feels like this is a huge benefit and can make the case for why we should do this? We have heard from several libraries that have signed up for services that they want this. I cannot speak for them though, so if any of them want to chime in here, feel free. We do know who is using which third parties. There's a question is, do you track who might have shared third-party vendor services? So we do know, all the libraries using Envisionware. We do know who is using the Lingso material handlers, or who's all using SpringShare or Canopy. So if those particular vendors or one library approached us for that, we would be able to tell you, so you could kind of get together and see if you could share the cost. There's a comment that says we have not been approached by vendors to change. That is probably true. I think we've only seen 3 or 4, or sorry, I don't mean not probably true. Most of you have not been approached by vendors to change. We've seen 4 or 5 emails from Overdrive to various libraries around the state. What we're actually seeing is that third-party vendors give you the sales pitch, tell you all the cool things they can do. You sign up with them, they start to connect to us. We set them up with SIP, and then they say, oh, but these 7 things don't work without web services. So that is what we're running into more often than vendors reaching out to the libraries, is more sales tactic problems right now, where they just tell you they can connect by a SIP, and they do, but then not all their functionality works. There's a question about any look at paying for these one at a time in the pool, like you were mentioning. I might need a clarification on this question.
Hey, Amy.
Yes.
Is it okay if I just talk?
Yes, please do.
I feel like we're all typing, but I'm having a really hard time typing and taking the notes. So I was just, what I'm noticing, and this is just speaking for myself as a member of a school library, but a district. So we have such like a large contribution that we basically are kind of treated like a mid-level public library. But we, like Crystal is saying, like we have flat budgets, and every increase means that we have to decrease services somewhere else. And so I want to support, like, sometimes we are paying for things that don't necessarily help out schools. Sometimes, publics are paying for things that help out schools more than other organizations. I absolutely understand like the Overdrive one, because so many people benefit from that, but it's super hard without like some concrete data about who's sharing what, because when I look at the difference between the 4% and the 6%, like we have a hard time selling $1,000 increase on our current budget when we don't have any more money and we can't really like make money.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah, exactly. Like we just get the money that we get, and we have to figure out how to allocate it. And I'm sure publics are facing very similar, situations. But I just like I don't think I think what I'm sensing from the few people who have commented is it's like, who is it affecting and how many people is it? And my question was like, like the Overdrive one to me, because it's so big, like it makes sense to be like, Overdrive is going to cost this much. Let's split it all out between everybody or everybody who uses Overdrive. Either one of those would have been fine with me. But when we're talking about Canopy and Hoopla and, meeting room stuff and all of that, like that doesn't really apply to some of us. And I think you know, it might be a few dollars on a percentage when you're smaller, but it's more when you're a little bigger. And so I'm having a hard time figuring out like how schools fit in there. Does that help?
That does, yes. And
Okay. So like,
and
are there, if it's like Canopy, like are 20 libraries using Canopy or like 100 libraries using Canopy? And like, how much would it cost to hook Canopy up? Like, do we have to do them all at once, this unlimited versus like one-time situations for web services?
so, the third-party vendor that most libraries are using is Overdrive. None of the other numbers approach that one. It would be 10 to 15 or less per vendor. See, I feel like there's several parts to this question. So the 36,000 gives us the unlimited web services, and then we would just pay for the connectors. If we do not do the unlimited web services connectors, the cost per connection goes way up. And then the library, each individual library would then have to pay for that entire thing.
Is there like
theoretically.
an option where we do Overdrive this year and it's this much money, and then in the future we potentially move to an unlimited thing or something like that? Like, I'm just wondering if there's somewhere in the middle, because I think what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from people is like, that feels like a pinch.
Right, and that is possible. I don't have a quote from Cirsi on what that would cost. I could get that quote, and we could meet again to vote on it, or we could word a motion in some way that if it was less than this, we would move forward if it wasn't. So yeah, that is a possibility. And there was a related question about, does this have to happen this upcoming fiscal year? Is this something that can wait a year? This does not need to happen this year. Like I said, we have several libraries that want this. The vendors are pushing it, but it's not required. It could wait a year. Obviously, not obviously. If we get it up and running sooner, more people can take advantage of it. But I can't imagine it's going to get cheaper. SirsiDynix might raise the price on it in coming years. This again is the $36,000, which would replace our $20,000 unlimited SIP. That's a flat amount. That our Cirsi contract goes up a percentage each year as part of our contract negotiations. We have the 5-year contract. This portion of the contract would not go up. There's a flat 36,000 per year, which would just be 16,000 more than what we're currently paying for the unlimited SIP. Scrolling down, there's a comment from Billings Public that has worked with Patron Point, and it's limiting what services they can use. Another comment about not much wiggle room in the budget or zero wiggle room in the budget. There's one that says, so this small library only uses 2 third-party vendors. Would we be paying for Canopy or Hoopla? That would be where we would talk to the libraries that are using those vendors and seeing if they wanted to pool to purchase a connector. There is a question about if the state does not get all the funds from IMLS, will libraries need to contribute more to the MSC? She would prefer that we put this off until next year with all the uncertainty now, if possible. The first part of that question, we are proceeding, the state library, are proceeding as though we are going to get our funding from IMLS. We've gotten the approval for the 50%, which we normally do. I have not heard any talk about like if we didn't get the full funding that we'd like add to the members' invoices, because after we vote on the budget today, the invoices will be going out very shortly after that, I don't think we would re-invoice libraries this year with additional costs. What we have done in prior years is implement changes at the state library level where we reallocate funding or go through the various budgeting processes that the state has. I will find out more about that question just to offer reassurance that we will not like re-invoice you with a higher amount later this year. And we'll put that in the next GovD, but I don't have an answer to that particular question. There has not been any discussion of that. I don't think that's a thing we would do, but I will verify. Because yeah, basically as soon as this meeting is over, we'll start generating invoices so that you all will have that. There is a question about opening a help desk ticket. If you want to put more info in the chat, or yeah, you can open a help desk ticket and we could try to explain more. There is another comment about waiting until it is something everyone agrees it is worth the money. Could we do a survey of all the members to see who uses what and determine a cost share amongst the current users? We theoretically, so basically it's saying like, do the cost for who's using what, share it out. Basically, yes, we can for the connector part. The unlimited license part, I guess we could try to share that out amongst the libraries who want to switch to web services, or we could do, like was mentioned, possibly do per vendor license instead of unlimited SIP. It's going to cost more if we do that. So it's my sense from the chat is that people are less concerned about the 1,000 per vendor, which would be covered by the libraries using that, and more about the $16,000 per year difference. If we had, 10 or 20 libraries who wanted to switch to web services and cover that in a pool, we could maybe arrange that, but that would have to be discussed. Is it also possible to use this as a negotiating point with vendors? If we know we're going to be using the web services, we can try to work in discounts on the products that use it. I would imagine you could discuss that with them. The MSC is usually not involved in your various negotiations with third-party vendors. The only vendor that we have a direct relationship with is Overdrive. So the third-party vendors are charging and contracting with individual libraries, not with the MSL or MSC.
Can I ask a question about so I'm looking at the proposed budget and cost share, and then so the 4% increase is just if we don't get these products, and the 6% is if we get both of these products. Is that right?
Yes.
And then on the top it says 6% increase, partial cost of the new products. Why is it the partial cost?
The state library is going to cover the 6% increase does not cover the full 48,000. It covers, I want to say, less than half of that. And that in my meetings with Jenny and our budget people here at the state library, they agreed that the state library would cover the other part of that cost.
Oh, okay. Okay, that answers that question. And so then let's just say we voted for the 6% increase, and I'm looking and it's like, well, for my library, I can't speak for other ones because the cost increase is much bigger for Missoula, for example. But for my library, I think it was 300. If I look down here, if we got that 300, let me see, 300, yeah, about 300. I mean, I could probably absorb that, but then I'm wondering the next year, what would be the percentage increase? Would it be the 4% or would it continue to be the 6%?
this is where I thought we probably needed to talk about both of these things at once. As part of the budget discussion, we changed the format, and as part of that, we talked about it, and Jenny and Melissa, who is our, oh, I don't know her title. She's our head person who deals with the finances. We all agreed very strongly that we would like the percentage increase to be more stable than it has been. And they really want to keep it at 4% going forward, barring any new thing that the consortium decided to purchase. So next year it would be 4%, not 6%. The 6% is just to get us to the new coverage here. There is
Amy, do you want me to move to any of the different documents as we talk
Let
about
me-
this? Just let me know, I guess, when you're ready.
I will. Okay, so there, I'm just scrolling down. So is there a way, there's a motion that if it doesn't have to happen this year, they would like to make a motion not to approve it this year, but revisit it for the next fiscal year. So there is a motion there. I do not see a second. I'm going to answer questions if somebody wants to second that motion. There was a clarifying question that this motion is to revisit the purchase of both of these items for the next fiscal year. There's a question, is there a way to get numbers on what our share would cost total with adding this new service? So Kylie, will you bring up the budget cost share? Yeah, so moving into our next item, because they're sort of all together. This is the amount, this is what the state library projects that the shared catalog will cost to operate next year, just under $800,000. And we have broken it into 3 sections: personal services, operating costs, software costs. There's a format change here where we used to like list just the member, just part of the employees and part of various things, because the state library covers the rest of it with a couple different funding sources. But we realized that wasn't very accurate to what was actually happening. This makes it more clear how much it costs to run the shared catalog. And then below that is the Montana State Libraries portion and the member libraries portion. And that number is based on last year. Because it tends to change. We have libraries that leave the shared catalog, and when they do, if they have not told us they're going to leave, then we put them in the cost share formula, and then they don't pay it. So then the state library covers that amount. And you get things like staffing changes. We luckily have not had any position turnover in the last few years. When fluctuations like that happens, the state library covers that, which is why I feel pretty confident saying we would not re-invoice if there was a change to our IMLS funding mid-year. We have not previously done that. So then there's the proposed member cost share. So the 4% increase is just to cover the shared catalog as it currently is for the next year. That includes the contracted increase in our overall SirsiDynix contract. They have a yearly increase. It includes, changes on the operating costs, software costs, different things like that. So the 4% increase is to just cover us as is. The 6% increase is to cover part of the proposed $47,000 for the 2 new products. So then if you look below, and this document is available on the Aspen event page, if someone from the MSC will drop a link to the event page and maybe even this document so you can pull it up on your own computers. That lists each member library, their current cost for fiscal year 25, which is what you got billed for last summer. And then the 4% increase would be just to keep us as we are. And the 6% increase would be to get the 2 new products. So the left column that says the total in each of those is what your invoice would be. And then the right column is how much more it is from the previous fiscal year. So the 2 change from previous fiscal years are comparing the number directly to the left of them to the one on the far left that was your last year's cost. So that was the answer to, can you see your numbers? Every library that is a member is listed on this document. Oh, I guess it was already linked there. Thank you. And yeah, and so Becky said, yeah, bringing up the negotiations piece for everyone. Yeah, it is worthwhile. Like if you have some argument that you can do as you're negotiating with a third-party vendor. Yeah, save all your money that you can. There's another comment that increases here and there, it all adds up, and that is very true. Like, as we've mentioned, we know that libraries' budgets do not grow the way we wish they did. If it's a yearly cost for the 2 new products and the state library is contributing, will the state library maintain their commitment going forward in future years? Yes, so that is part of what we discussed with keeping it at a 4% increase next year, is that the state library would keep contributing. The percentage where you see the Montana State Library member libraries and MSL is paying 37% and member libraries are paying 63%. Like I said, that's for the current fiscal year. That number fluctuates when things change mid-year and the state library ends up covering more, and those aren't set percentages. They change depending on what's happening. Some years we have additional LSTA funding that hasn't been used for something else, and the state library will push it towards MSC expenses. And some years we have less, and so then it just fluctuates a little bit. They're not set percentages anywhere. And yeah, so I think I answered like the next 2 questions about, is that kind of some kind of one-time part of the cost that they would contribute? That would just be built into part of, our next year. We're hoping for 4%, and or next year we are planning on 4%, and we would like to keep that 4% moving forward, if not lower, because we've had in past years, as the cost share formula has gotten wonkier and wonkier in the way it applies, it has been some years for some libraries like 15% increase. We don't want that. 4% is much easier to plan for. If we could do something to make that less, we would. So if we get an opportunity for more funding from the legislature, obviously we would use that and not do a full 4% increase if that became a thing. Then there's a comment that says, I think the amount of the increase is pretty reasonable, all things considered. Also think this is reasonable, and we need to at least upgrade to web services, and upgrading BCA is always a good thing as well. Then a comment, I really want to support this, but as a percentage, the cost to us is so much because of our size. And she knows we have problems. She said we hate cost formulas. We hate broken cost formulas. But she would really like to be a little more based on use weighted. If there are people who are using it on 8 products versus just using it on overdrive. There's a question, if we wait a year, could the cost increase a lot compared to doing it this year? We're going to have to switch at some point, and is doing it now making best financial sense for us right now? I cannot speak to Cirsi's pricing. I can say that things have never gotten cheaper when it's a product like this that you're buying, like the price doesn't decrease. If we are already using it when we go through our next RFI, RFP, it gives us more negotiating room. And I don't know, so this year MSL has committed to paying the difference to keep it at a 6% increase. I think when I calculated it without MSL, so we just set the 6% arbitrarily. If we assigned all of the costs of the new products to the members, I think that it was, I think it was like an 11 or 12% increase. No, it was more than that. It might have been a 14% increase to cover the new products. And that in our budgeting meetings, I said that the members absolutely could not cover that cost. And so they crunched numbers and looked at things, and we brought it down to 6% increase for the members, and the state library would cover the rest. I can't guarantee that would happen again next year's. There is a comment that says, if our MSC colleagues say that the BCA private suite add-on will make it easier for them to provide us with the services we need, then it is a worthwhile investment. If web services is the new industry standard, then we should prepare for inevitable requirements from vendors that we move from SIP to the new standard. For me, establishing a method of sharing the one-time 1K cost on potential vendor requests would be the most important, since we don't have a sense of who or when web services might become a necessity or requirement from various vendors. And then somebody saying that's a good summary, and they agree with that. We've discussed a lot of different scenarios. Thank you so much for the discussion. Before we vote, can we have a summary of the two options, just to make sure that everyone understands what we're voting on? And then Denise said she will make a motion to get the two new products and do 6% increase this year with no more than 4% increase next year. So to jump back up to answer the question, is the two options, the options overall depend on the motion, because you as the members decide on the motion. But what we have shown here is the 4% increase is minimum to keep the MSC running. And then if we want to buy both of these new products, it would be a 6% increase. So Denise has made a motion to just purchase the new products, do the 6% increase this year with no more than a 4% increase next year. So we would need a second on that.
Amy, I have a clarification on that.
Mm-hmm.
Can her motion include that there would be no more than 4% increase next year without knowing what the costs and everything will be for next year? Or can we only vote on the current budget? Just to clarify.
I would imagine that just in terms of the procedural rules that you could only vote on this year's. But as I said, we discussed this with Jenny and Melissa, and they're both very committed to it being 4% next year. There's a comment, if the state is contributing now, she appreciates that too. Knowing how many connections are in use would be nice. And then I think had the same question probably about the motion. There's a question, if we approve the 6% increase, will there be an additional 1,000 as well? There will not be an additional 1,000. If you approve the 6% increase, the total that is listed on this spreadsheet will be the amount you get on your invoice. The 1,000 would be if your library is using something and you want to switch to web services, and you either pay that 1,000 yourself, or we group you with a bunch of other libraries using that same vendor. That would be individually worked out with the libraries using the various things. So if you vote on the 6%, the amount is there. There would not be $1,000 on top of that, either shared or per library. It's just the 6% amount that's listed. Jackie says, we'll second the motion made by Denise. And then Elizabeth says, do you need a motion to accept this investment now, or is this part of approving the overall budget? I think we have a motion and a second, so that would sort of get the new products and do a 6% increase. That sort of rolls them into one. We presented it this just in this order, just to explain why there was the 4 and the 6. They could be separate motions or they could be together. Yeah, so then there's a question of, can Denise's motion be amended to only discuss this fiscal year? So that would roll back, I think, to Denise, and we would say, Denise, would you accept an amendment to change it to a motion to get the 2 new products and do a 6% increase this year?
I could do that. However, I know the legislature votes on things that's more than 2 years, so I was just wondering why we couldn't do that motion. Like they voted for PERS contributions to go up for 2 years.
Our budget
That's
at the state
true.
library is annual. I know
Yearly,
that
so-
the legislature works on a biennium, but the state library does not, because a lot of our funding sources come from different places.
I see. Anyway, I said that
And I'm
was
not,
fine.
yeah, and I'm not saying we can't do that. I just didn't know. It just seemed
Yeah, and-
like there
and
may be.
I admit that I do not know either. So we have the accepted amendment of, and Kylie, would you mind pulling like up a Word document and putting that motion on the screen? There is a question that says, will libraries that don't need or want the upgraded SIP be able to remain with the old version, or will they have to contribute to the new connection fees to their already established third-party vendors? I think that would end up being, we wouldn't force anybody to move to the new web services. So if you were using something that was being upgraded, I think that we wouldn't force anybody to pay that increase. Somebody would need to pay it per vendor. So if somebody really wants it for their library and they can't afford the 1,000, or they can't get a pool together for the 1,000, I think that part would probably have to wait.
Amy, do you want me to copy the language that Becky shared just now in like the second to last comment?
I think that I just don't know. We've never had like a 2-year, a future year proposal. And my guess would be because it's not as part of our budget next year, I just don't know if we can vote on that. I guess somebody could ask Tracy in chat, somebody on the MSC, if she's in.
Well, I think the other thing that would happen is even if you approve something now, you could unapprove it next year. So there's no guarantee because you would have to vote on next year's budget as the membership next year.
Yeah,
So
it is in the bylaws that you vote on the budget every year. So there was a thank you for typing up the motion. We're going to put it on the screen before anybody has to vote. We're working on what's going to go on the motion. So there's no second on the amended version yet. So we've accepted the amendment, but we would need another second. Becky is correct there. She is suggesting, how about with the assumption that the state library will hold to a 4% increase in the future? I think in the future is problematic because that doesn't have an end date. But so we have this as the accepted amendment, and Jackie has, or no, this is the amended motion on the screen, and Jackie has seconded that. So if we feel the need to further amend it to keep something about 4% next year, we can wordsmith that more, but we do have a motion and a second on the table for this. Yes. Any other questions or comments about this? And we can pull up the other things on the screen as well. We have the, let me double check that I talked about everything that I included in the budget memo. Okay, since we sort of combine them. So we talked about the format change. And this document, this is all in the budget memo that is on the Aspen event. So that this is all written out. The MSL is proposing that 4% flat increase, the 2 new items, and then it lists the revenue sources, which is member libraries. We get state general fund or coal severance tax subsidy. That's part of, there is a state funds allocated for resource sharing. Half of that amount goes to the MSC. The other half amount goes to OCLC group services. And then the LSTA funding from IMLS also goes to the MSC. And then descriptions of what those 3 expense categories are. Salaries and benefits for MSC staff, so the 5 of us who introduced ourselves at the beginning, and then a small portion for other MSL staff time, like when our invoices are sent out or you pay them, the accounting team handles that. All of the work of pulling down our federal funding and doing all the payroll, basically all the administrative costs. A tiny bit of that gets charged to the MSC just because of the rules of government. And then operating costs on that budget, which was 51,227, includes some staff travel, equipment, hardware, and software, the required portion that we have to pay as a state agency to the state government, and then our Kasugi fee, which is our institutional membership for what is basically insurance. If SirsiDynix goes out of business, Kasugi would get the software, all of the intellectual property, and then would be responsible for upholding those products while the member libraries worked through moving to other ILSs, so that we couldn't just lose all of SirsiDynix's support overnight. We have this sort of insurance thing through Kasugi. And then the software costs is the actual cost of the SirsiDynix contract and for all of the ILS and the associated products. Yes, so there's a comment of I think we're still discussing amending the motion. So there's a comment of about accept a one-time 6% increase this year on the end of that, to imply that we recognize the 6% deviates from the historical 4%, and we don't want to make that the new normal. This is an exception. There's a comment about missing the in-person meetings because we feel like we're not getting as much comments from people so far. So if you have feelings on this, please speak up. Carmen says, still feel very confused as to how the $1,000 per vendor cost will be handled. I will clarify that again in a second, but don't let me forget that I was gonna say that. There is, Denise is accepting the amendment of the motion with Elizabeth's suggestion to add change. So do a 6% increase this year, change do a to accept a one-time 6% increase this year. Do the two new products.
So do you want me to do that, Amy?
Yes, please.
And then Amy, just so we all have all the information, do you know what the OCLC, is there going to be a change to that cost too?
I don't know. I think that the contract is up for renewal either this year or next year. I can chat to, let me see if Savannah has that information, but I don't know that that has been calculated yet. There was a comment about suggesting a survey as to who's using what third-party vendor. We wouldn't necessarily need a survey because, like I said, most of that is in SIP, so we can see that on our side, unless you change vendors without telling us. But yes, so there's a question about, do we now go to the amendment language and get a second and continue the discussion? Yes, so we have an accepted amendment to the motion and we would need a second on this motion.
Amy, can I just ask, this is Carmen, so what I meant with who's, I don't really care who's using what kind of third-party vendor, but we have a few, right? And would just be good to know who else is using them, as to, are we the only ones paying the $1,000, or is it going to be divided by 20 or whatever? So that's, that's my hold up right now where I'm at.
Yes, so we have a second for the amendment from Elizabeth. So, second so you're seconding this motion, Elizabeth, I think is what we need. We don't, okay. So so this motion is being seconded. So now we're discussing this motion. So that is a good question, Carmen. Like I said, other than Overdrive, I don't think we have any third-party vendor that more than about 10 libraries are using. So it definitely wouldn't be divided by 20. Most of our vendors are more like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. But you would not be signing up for the $1,000 difference unless somebody who was using that, unless your library wanted to switch to the web services connection. And then, I think will be maybe answering the $1,000 thing. If you as a library individually are using a vendor and you want to switch to web services, you as the library will have to pay that $1,000 fee. If other libraries are using the same vendor, we can ask them if they want to pool with you, but we can't force them to pool with you. So then at that point, you as an individual library will have to decide if the web services additional functions is worth the $1,000 for you. And that $1,000 is a one-time fee. You just have to pay to get it set up. It doesn't increase your MSC cost year to year. It's just that initial setup fee. Does that help? Does that make it more clear? So like each library using a service will have to decide if the web services part is worth the upgrade to them. And if they do, they will have to pay the $1,000 unless we have other libraries that also would like that functionality and want to chip in. Okay, so there's a question about what is web services. So SIP is the current SIP, is the current connection protocol that third-party vendors use to log into our system and do stuff. For Overdrive, they just check that the patron exists at the library that they said they did and are in good standing. And then some of you have various other things like if they're an online registration, they can't use Overdrive until they get set to full patron standing or whatever. Self-checks use SIP to log in and say, this patron is checking out these items. So it checks the items out to them. Other vendors like Canopy and Hoopla do essentially what Overdrive Montana Library to Go does. It checks the system to see if the patron exists with their barcode, and if they're not blocked for some reason before it lets them into the service that your library is paying for. So SIP does that. Web services is the new technology that will be replacing SIP over the coming years, that connects to the system in a more functional way. So they will have more options. So for Overdrive, it will be checking the user on our side in a little bit different of a way instead of just relying on the barcode. So that's how they'll be able to tell if the barcode changes, they'll still know it's the same patron, things like that. Other things that the vendors have said, like there's ones that will be able to check if a patron has not been active and then send them an email saying, hey, you haven't been in, or if they have recently been active. So it's basically, they'll just have more, be able to do more with the information they get out of our system. But it's going to be replacing SIP over the next few years because, which I should have said this, and I'm not even sure it's in the memo, it is much more secure. SIP is plain text because it's very old. So it doesn't, it's not encrypted. Can't believe I forgot that. My apologies. Web services is encrypted, so it couldn't be, I don't know, intercepted by some bad actor between us and the vendor in getting any information out of it. So that's another reason why vendors probably want to switch, is that it's more secure.
Amy?
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's also worth mentioning, or I don't think you mentioned it before. We have had a couple libraries ask us for products that we have not been able to implement because we did not have access to web services. And we've had to tell those libraries just a flat no, because we don't have it. So there already are some services out there that only use web services and cannot use SIP. So I don't know if that helps anyone's thought process.
So that is what web services is. It's the new connection protocol between third-party vendors and our library software database system. There's a question too. So are we just trying to get unlimited before it gets more expensive? We could vote on this and then no one would upgrade except Overdrive if no one ponies up for the other connections. It sounds like we should be moving to web services because it's better and newer than SIP and requires less work for staff and provides updated experience. And we will have to move to this at some point, but Cirsi charges us to move. So all that is correct. Yes. For your question of we could vote and then no one would upgrade except Overdrive, that theoretically could happen. Based on the third-party products that libraries have, I would expect there to be 5 or 6 upgrade requests fairly shortly. We have libraries that are using vendors now that want the extra stuff. There's a question. So for us to take advantage of the benefits, we will have to switch from Overdrive to web services, which will cost $1,000. That was answered in chat, but I will reiterate. If we get this, the MSC/MSL does plan to upgrade this for Overdrive, which would be all the Montana Library to Go and Sora libraries. And that part, there will not be $1,000 extra charge for that because we will just include that in the portion that the state library is covering. There's a comment about being able to sell not encrypted to the tech department, but then we have to admit it wasn't as secure to start with, which is true. There is, in any sort of technical thing, there's always little bits that are hanging out behind the curve, and SIP is one of them. And we've actually had a few libraries that have joined the MSC in the past 4 or 5 years that have had a problem with the fact that SIP was the only thing that was available because it isn't as secure. So Yeah, it's good to hear that there would be several requests right away that would probably cover at least 36 libraries each, but it's really hard to get an idea of scale. It is hard to get an idea of scale. We do have, we have this written down in here. Let me find the thing. We currently have over 120 SIP connections in that are used every day. I would not expect all of those to move to web services. I do not know, like for instance, if EnvisionWare's public user PC scheduling software would benefit from web services, or if EnvisionWare has a version that has web services. Yeah, and so the 120 SIP connections, if we have a vendor, that's just one. For instance, that's just one for Overdrive. Like all the libraries using Montana Library to Go in Sora on one SIP connection. So it's sort of 120. It's not per vendor, because if you have like a self-check machine or a public access scheduling, those are separate per library, but the third-party vendors that are like Canopy and Hoopla, or sort of something some of them are grouped. If we can group them, we do. There is a comment that we've heard a lot of great information from Amy. Thank you. Please do ask other questions. Are we ready to vote for this? So calling for the vote. We'll give a call for like any final questions before we call for the vote.
I have a final question. So let's just say we vote on this and it passes. Do we then say to our, like Overdrive or Canopy or Hoopla individual libraries, say, oh, we want to have this new web services, or this is something that how does it even happen? Then we get
So
to switch over.
That is a good question. So for Overdrive, the state library, we MSC will handle that. If you are using another vendor, I would reach out to the MSC first, and then just to verify, because we have to purchase this and set it up. Like we don't want you paying, getting your vendor charging you extra or turning on things that we don't have access to yet. Check with us, and then we will talk to you. And then I say, you would be talking to your vendor. It's sort of like when you go set up a new SIP connection, you talk to your vendor, you talk to us, you talk to your vendor, you kind of are the pass through as we give you all the information to set this up. So yeah, it would be, and especially for the ones where we have, well, that's a good question. Yeah. So if you let us know, and we could put it in, trying to think of the best way to list what services we have more than one library using. We'll compile a list of SIP that's in use, and if but yeah, since the contracts are individually generally per library and with vendor, other than the vendor reaching out to either us or a member library, we don't know which ones have new features that would work with web services. So it would be generated or started on the library side, but I would suggest reaching out to the MSC first before you talk to your vendors. Which, just as a total aside, I would recommend that for any new purchase you're making, because as Melody mentioned, we've had libraries ask us for a thing. The vendor can only use web services, and it's problematic if you have already signed a contract with them and it can't work with our system. So we do recommend that if you're thinking about purchasing something new, that you let us know first so we can tell you if it will work with our system. Okay. I will give it just a couple more seconds. Nobody typed anything while I was talking. So we have a motion that has been seconded to accept a one-time 6% increase this year to get the two new products. We've had the discussion. Any final questions? So all in favor of the motion, please type aye or yes in the chat. I suppose since we're doing it in the chat like this, if you were opposed, you can type nay in the chat.
Also, as a reminder, if you are multiple people from one library, hopefully you know who the voting member is. But it's one vote per library.
Yeah, one vote per library. Okay. Please vote if you have not yet, either aye for or yes or no if you oppose this motion, and then give me a second while we scroll back through and count. If you have not voted, please vote. I'll give you just a couple seconds to type that in there. But it does look like the motion passes. We will. Okay. So yes, yeah. So the motion passes to accept a one-time 6% increase this year to get the new products with the planned, not an increase of 6% less. Next year will be 4%. And thank you everybody for that great discussion. We do want to address people's concerns and make sure everything is as clear as we can make it before we get to a vote. So that actually covered the second item on the list of action items. The 6% was rolled into the budget and cost share. Are there any other questions about the budget or the cost share before we move to the next item?
I have a doomsday scenario question, which is which is like, let's just say something happens and we find that budgets are really slashed or something like that. Are there products that that we could remove if need be in the future?
So in the past, our contract with Cirsi precluded removing products. Like we could remove them, but we didn't pay any less. I think that got changed in our last contract negotiation because I found it really, really problematic that if we decided to stop using something, we just would get charged for it until it was time for a new contract. But let me double check in the contract really quick to make sure that and we have that they're not allowed to charge us more when our circulation goes up. That's not it. Sorry, I'm scrolling. I think we changed the thing, but I can't find it in this contract to make it so that we would be able to, like, we can't turn off like Symphony ILS, but like that we have some options for the other parts. But I will have to get back to you on that, Denise, because it's like a 40-page contract.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because we have done that in the past, and we had, like, when we stopped using the booking module and the reserves module, mostly don't use those, they would not reduce our contract amount, even though they quote us for those items individually. And I think that we worked really hard to get some kind of option in there. But also our contract only goes, I think, through 2027. And then we'll be up for either renegotiation or an RFI. So we have more flexibility there too. Yes, any other questions about the budget and cost share? There is a comment about positive IMLS news from Jenny Stapp whilst we have been in the meeting. So definitely reassuring in respect to these budget things. Was that something to Wired? Yeah, okay, so Jenny sent an email to Wired about 20 minutes ago about some of the 3 states that had their fiscal year 24 awards terminated. They've been reinstated, and there was a ruling on the lawsuit. So yeah, so there's some news from Jenny about IMLS on Wired. The next item on our agenda, thanks again, everybody, for the discussion about the budget and the new Cirsi products. It works better when people share their concerns or their wishes for things. So we definitely want to make sure everybody got a chance to ask their questions and discuss. The next item on the agenda is record privatization. I marked this as an action so that it would be here if we decided to take an action. I sort of expect this one to be either no motion or get tabled for people to think about it, go back to their libraries, and discuss with their boards and their staff for the fall meeting. I did not put out a memo on this one for several reasons, but part of it is just we don't necessarily want to post anywhere that says we don't really have a policy on this, but we don't really have a policy on how the MSC privatizes the records that we have in the system. And what I mean by privatize is there are functions in the system where we can change it after a period of time where the barcode of the patron who checked out a book or placed a hold on a book or did anything in the system gets replaced with an anonymous number. And this was happening. It's been done for years. It used to be a manual process, and it was a more than 90 days the records were privatized. It happened frequently, but not on a necessarily regular schedule because it was a manual process. It took extra time. It had to be done when nobody was on the system, had all these caveats. So we MSC staff did this on a frequent but not regular basis for more than 90 days. When we moved to SAS in 2017, part of that changed. The manual process wouldn't work anymore. So Cirsi does have an automated process that we can set up. But because we don't have a policy, it's not anywhere that I've been able to find, unless I've just completely missed it, that 90 days was chosen by anyone or voted on by the members. It seems to have been just kind of arbitrarily picked as a length of time back when the MSC very first became a thing. So we feel like there probably should be a policy so that everybody knows what it is and can refer to that if people ask questions. The date range could theoretically, as far as the MSC is concerned, be whatever works best for the librarians. We're not 100% sure how it would work with BCA. If we privatize them 3 months from now, is that information still in BCA? SirsiDynix presumably has some solution for that. The other thing is that in recent years, we have had requests for that historical information more and more frequently for library purposes. Can you tell me who checked this item out 6 months ago? Can you tell me everything this patron had? Because we got books back with bed bugs in them. We need to check everything else that they had, or lice, or they all had water damage inside that you couldn't see. We need to go check. So we have had requests like that. We have had requests for, we found a message concerning information in an item. We need to know who had it when. The MSC and the Montana State Library follow Montana Code advocated for the library privacy rules. If it is for your library purposes, like finding someone or something, we will give you that information. If it's to give to a third party, like the police, we do have to get a warrant and they have to serve it to you and it be sent to us. So we follow all those rules, but we do see that sometimes having that older information has been very useful for you. So that is kind of where we're at. We feel like there probably should be a policy if we're going to privatize or not privatize, what the length of time would be that would work best. And yeah, so mostly I think this is discussion. I put action in case like everybody just agreed immediately what they thought it should be, but I sort of don't expect that to happen because we haven't discussed this previously much. There is a question about, can we explain what happens when you privatize a record? So in the system, as right now, if a patron checks out a book or places a hold, it writes a line to our history logs that it's all in code. So it doesn't have names or titles or anything, but it's like this patron barcode and this book barcode had this interaction. Check out, pay to find, place to hold. Privatizing would, on a scheduled basis, using the process that is built in, which we have not, we would do extensive testing before we just flipped it on because we don't want to break anything. It takes in those history logs where the patron barcode is, though it replaces that patron barcode. The old manual way, it replaced it with a string of X's. I'd have to go look and see. I don't know off the top of my head what the new version does, but it basically replaces the patron barcode in the history log over a certain age with something besides the patron barcode. So you can't look back either via the patron barcode or the item. The item barcode remains, but if you look up the item barcode, it doesn't tell you which patron it was. So if you said, what is the history of this book from 6 years ago? We would be able to tell you it was checked out on this day, but we wouldn't be able to tell you who, if that was longer ago than whatever timeline we decide on. I don't think that it would affect the charge history where a patron has opted in to keep a list of items that they have checked out on their record. That's a separate thing. So those would stay. And it doesn't necessarily affect statistics, because the statistic that an item was checked out by a patron at your library is recorded in a separate place, but anonymized. It will record the library, the user categories, the item library, the item categories. It records all those for statistics, but in that particular table, as far as I know, it doesn't save the patron or item information. Yeah, so there was a question that I think I answered as I was talking, because I was looking away from that screen. Yeah, if their checkout history is turned on, I think that the privatization does not affect that part. So I guess for today, the real question is, where are people feeling like, do you want to be privatizing things, or is it more important at this time to be able to track back and find things? Do we have an idea for like a preferred date range that you would like? It's like that, just sort of general discussion for this. When we changed to SaaS, the manual process that was happening before that doesn't work quite as well. So, and then we were looking to find the like a policy to work with, and we don't have a policy. So legal services say we should do. That is, so there's a question, what do legal services say we should do? That is a very good question. I do not know that we have ever asked that particular question. We ask them whenever we get requests. We frequently send it up for like consultation to make sure that we are indeed following the law, the privacy law. But that's just in terms of releasing information. I can ask that question and find out what their opinion on basically obfuscating that data would be. The benefit to privatizing is literally just for user privacy. Over the years, it has been a thing where if you do get served a warrant for some reason or another, if you simply do not have that information anymore, that can protect your patron's privacy and the library somewhat. But I'm not a lawyer. I can't, but yeah, so the benefit to privatizing is it literally just removes the information so that it's not there if you get asked for it legally and you do not want to release it. And the drawback is essentially what is mentioned in the question in the chat, is that you can't then track back to link a user to an item or find out exactly what happened with an item if you have problems. There's a comment that I think that it is important to privatize the records at some point. I think that 90 days is reasonable, is the comment in there. And 90 days is what the shared catalog had historically used. It just wasn't documented anywhere.
Is there any other positive, like it would make the catalog work faster?
It shouldn't have any effect on the catalog, no. So yeah, I don't think there's really any other positive involved. It's literally just, it makes it private, so you don't have the information, and that's all it does. There's a question about any recommendations by other states or library groups, and to confirm no impact on bills, schools, or PLO type processes. I don't know that I have heard anything from other states or library groups, so that would be another place we could gather some information. SirsiDynix would probably be able to tell us what other consortiums are using. And it would generally not impact bills or PLO type processes, because where it would be changing this would be in the history logs. So if the patron still has the item checked out, you can, and like it's going through the assume loss process and it's lost and it's checked out to them still, you would be able to see it on the user account. So it would still be tied there. So yeah, it's changing only the history. And that is also an exception in the Montana Code Annotated, that when you're trying to retrieve lost or stolen materials or fines, then that sort of becomes less private. So
like, for example, with the claims returned, would it stay, are you saying that that wouldn't be connected to that patron's record anymore? Because sometimes, because you have to manually take off their claims, because like sometimes there's they'll find it and then it comes back, and if you don't know who the patron is that checked it out, then you can't take off that claim.
Right. If it's claims return, unless it has gone through a different process, it is still checked out to the patron. Mostly where you see it is the items that have gone through the PLO and have been marked lost and fully removed from the patron record. And again, that process generally puts the item barcode in a different field. That on the user record, that field would not be affected. It's just in who checked it out. But that's true, Denise. If something strange happened, it wasn't on that field on the user record, and it had been checked out a long time ago, you would not necessarily be able to tell who had checked it out. So I will give you a few more minutes to write questions. I do want to leave us enough time for the call number analytics. So this was sort of just, like I said, bringing this up for discussion. There was some good feedback here. Unless somebody really objects, we can revisit this at the fall meeting if somebody wants to get it handled today. But we do have a number of unanswered questions, which is, like I said, is kind of how I expected this part to go. So yeah, so if you do have questions or concerns about that, like anything else, please feel free to open a ticket and we can discuss it. But yeah, we will revisit this in the fall with the intention of creating some policy. Let's jump into the call number analytics, and feel free to keep typing comments about this as we go.
Okay.
That's a good question. Sorry, Kylie. There's a
Nope, you're
question,
fine.
since it is an action item, do you need a motion to table it? I don't know the answer to that. We didn't have a motion to do anything with it, so I don't know that we need a motion to table it.
It's just listed as an action item on the agenda, so I put it that way on the slide. I think it might
Yeah. That's a
be
Robert rule
inactive.
clarification, yeah, that we will get. Okay. Call number
All right.
6.
All right, so we wanted to bring up really quickly some changes to call number analytics that are happening this month. This is something we talked about at the Montana Library Association conference for those of you who were able to attend our session. And we provided a handout during that session that has since been updated, and the handout is included on the Aspen event. And it's what I'm going to be referencing as I talk about this. We also have an updated knowledge base article, and there will be more coming for like frequently asked questions and things of that nature in our knowledge base, which I will reiterate at the end. But just so you're aware, you'll be able to access this information in multiple ways. All right. So what is a call number analytic? Many of you will know, especially if you're a cataloger. Some of you may have heard this term, and others of you may be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So a call number analytic is the bit of the call number that comes after something that appears as a bar capital Z. And you may hear it referred to as the bar Z or pipe Z, because that little mark is like a pipe. The system, so workflows, will analyze what comes after the bar Z in your current call number field to know which part of a series or multi-part work you own, that this overarching kind of group record that you've attached to, which part of it you have in-house. So this is useful for sorting when you're looking at options for what your library owns in the catalog, as well as for placing holds. And so I have a little screenshot to the right of what it might look like when someone goes to place a hold on a specific item that libraries in a sharing group may all own. So if you're really hot to trot and you want to check out or place a hold on the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, when you go to do that in Enterprise, as it is now, you have a lot of options in the drop-down. And that's because people have been entering the call number analytic rather inconsistently over time. We haven't necessarily had set rules. And so that's something we're working on rectifying now. All right, so we have 3 basic changes that are starting this month. So May 2025. Workflows will no longer force a bar Z into a call number when you type capital V period, or when you type in other text combinations like month and year. And that's relevant for those of you who are cataloging your periodicals or like your magazines and rely on that forced call number analytic. This change, just so we're aware, applies only to the Dewey classification scheme. Catalogers will need to add the bar Z manually when necessary for those that are using the Dewey classification scheme. And this is meant to make it more intentional. It means that we're going to avoid what I said of like the bar Z automatically being added when you're trying to create a call number, but maybe you don't intend to actually add an analytic to it, but it happens anyway because of what you're typing. So we're trying to avoid that mess, but know that since you will need to add it manually sometimes when the situation warrants, we have specific guidelines for that, which I will get into. The Dewey per class scheme, that's for periodicals only, will still force the bar Z. So If in the past you've used the Dewey class scheme and you have cataloged your periodicals that way, and you're used to having the bar Z forced, you'll just want to switch over to using the Dewey per class scheme. And we'll have screenshots of that in our article, so don't worry. Secondly, the space between the V period and whatever number follows it will be removed in batch so that it will read as bar Z, V period, and then whatever the number. No extra spaces in there. This is meant to improve labeling issues and create consistency. Catalogers will be expected to enter the analytic without a space between the V period and the number. With one caveat here, we will not be doing batch changes of like DVD call number analytics. I'm talking specifically when you think about your TV series. Those won't necessarily be changed in batch, but we do have guidelines for how to fix those, and I will be covering that as well. Finally, catalogers will be expected to use separate bibliographic records for series. So you're going to want to attach, generally, if you have an item in a series, you're going to want to attach to an individual like title record for that, and we'll get into that more. That's definitely been something that's been a question for us for many years, and we've finally come down on the side of the argument that we want separate bib records for those. Okay, so like I said, I'm just going through the handout that shout out to Melody. She spent a lot of time putting this together. So we're going to go through, let's see here, 4 different examples. And the first one is, if you have a book that comes out annually or regularly, so some examples of that I have in the chart on the right, like travel guides, Fedore's Italy, the Guinness Book of World Records, Taste of Home Christmas, anything like that, you are going to want to select a title record that is specific for the year of your book. And if no record like that exists for the specific year in the system, we don't want you to bring in a record that is for all the years. Instead, we want you to open a ticket with us to help you find or create a record that you need. Because this record will indicate the specific year of your book, you do not add a bar Z to your call number. However, you can add the year to your call number if that's your library's preference. It is not required, though in the examples on the right, I have done that just so you can see what it would look like. Exceptions to this rule for books that come out annually or regularly are things like yearbooks, annual reports, and some similar items that may need to share a record. If you run into any of those and you're confused about the instructions we provide in our knowledge base, just open a ticket. We can help you clarify what kind of record you should be attaching to. Okay, so that's the first example. Books that come out regularly or annually. Second one, this is where it starts to get pretty exciting, is when you have a book that is part of a complete set. And the examples of that are A History of Montana by Helen Fitzgerald Sanders, pardon me. Also Encyclopedia Britannica. Again, the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. How do you know, though, if you have an item that's part of a set as opposed to a series? Well, in this case, if you have a group of items that has one common title, like the Encyclopedia Britannica, they all have that title, and it's usually considered to be one consistent work that's broken into parts, then it's usually a set. And the Mark 300 tag in the title record will have the number of volumes listed. So the examples we have here all meet that criteria. And on the left, here are the steps for how to apply your call number analytic. So if your set shares one barcode for all volumes in the set. We know some libraries do that in this case. You're going to add the bar Z at the end of a call number, and then add V period, and then the full number of volumes separated with a dash or a hyphen. So for example, Sanders' History of Montana would be bar Z V period 1-3. And similarly with Encyclopedia Britannica for volumes 1 through 27 or what have you. If each volume of the set has its own item barcode, then you're just gonna end your call number with bar Z V period and then the number of that volume for each item. And that, so I have a couple examples of individual barcodes there. Do not include any other information after the bar Z. The bar Z lets the system know this is basically a subfield of the call number, and we want to make sure that those are just uniform across the system so that if anyone goes to place a hold on those items in their dropdown, they'll only see kind of these approved ways of labeling the analytic. The admins want me to let you guys know that title records that include multiple volumes, but you only have one item listed from a library will be assumed to include all volumes in the set. So the administrators may add the bar Z to fix holds and cataloging issues on these records. Okay. Now you may be wondering, how do I add a call number analytic or a bar Z to my call number? And so I have this dandy little visual of the keyboard, and all you'll have to do is press the shift button and then the button that's like right above enter or below backspace, and it will create that pipe for you. And it doesn't matter which shift button you use. I know you have two, but I just wanted to highlight where they are next to each other. So that's how you'll manually add that bar Z. Okay. Now, if you have a book in a series, these are definitely kind of the more recognizable ones. But hold on, before I get into that, how do you know if it's a series and not a set? We kind of talked about sets just a moment ago, but bib records that have a MARC 490 or 830 tag are in a series. They have a series statement or authority assigned to them. And items in series usually have a series title that is different than the individual volume or item title. So a really good example of this is we have the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but when people are looking for specific books in that trilogy, we're going to think The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, Return of the King. So those individual book titles are different from their series title. Okay. In this case, you do not add a bar Z to call numbers for series where each part is on its own record. That's because the title record is indicating to the person, here's the title of this item. It is part of this series. And the title record, if you want to add the series number order, such as number 2 or number 3, in the call number, you may. This will not cause issues as long as there is no bar Z in the call number. But in the examples on the right with the Two Towers, you may put like fiction Tolkien number 2, just for ease of your patrons finding it, the call number. If items in series do not have individual titles, it is still recommended to have them on their own title record if one exists. This can be particularly useful for manga. For example, Fruits Basket does not have individual titles for each volume, but there is a separate record for each volume in our system. And this kind of goes back to it also being more intuitive for our patrons if they're searching the series Fruits Basket. And they look that up in the system and they're able to kind of scroll through their list of results and see like cover art for each volume in the series that looks different. They can more easily identify which they're looking for, as opposed to one bit of cover art that applies to however many 20, 30 something volumes. So this is kind of where we're finally taking a stand, and we want separate records for each of these. If the only record that exists for a book in a series lists all volumes together on a serial record, let us know. Reach out to us for assistance, and we can help you in finding or creating individual records. In some rare cases, a group bib record may still be the best option, but we'll definitely confirm that with you so that we know we're doing the right thing. You'll notice in all the examples on the right, just to drive this home, that we're not using a BARZ call number analytic because the title record already indicates the series order or which item it is in a series. Okay. And finally, television series on DVD. If you have these, when possible, individual seasons of TV series should be on their own title records. This is easiest for patrons to find and understand. And it's recommended that libraries check out each season as a whole rather than breaking it into individual discs. Again, because it's easier for patrons to understand. And it also reduces complications with volumes and discs that we've run into in the past. Now, we are now insisting that folks use the word disc or discs instead of volume when you're putting call numbers together for your DVD sets. So some examples of this: if multiple discs are checked out together using one barcode, we want you to add BARZ discs and then 1 through 3 or similar to show that your barcode includes all the discs. If you barcode and check out each disc independently, you must still add the BARZ disc 1 or similar to show which disc that barcode represents. Make sure to not include any other information aside from the disc information after the BARZ. So if it's information about the series, the season, or other part information, that should come before the BARZ. Please note that just like with some of the other items we've talked about, DVD television series that have one item or barcode listed from a library will be assumed to include all discs in the set. So the system administrators may add the BARZ to fix holds and cataloging issues on these records. And one last thing that I put on this slide, definitely don't use the ampersand or the and symbol to indicate if you only have 2 discs in an analytic. Instead, use the hyphen or the dash. So discs 1 through 2, not disc 1 and 2. Again, I know this was a brief overview. We have an article right now cataloging series, multi-part works, and applying analytics. It's in our knowledge base. It is incredibly thorough and very helpful. We have instructions, screenshots, and flow charts to help you catalog items in a variety of formats and more items than I covered in just this brief presentation. There are also instructions for handling local items and kits and things like that. We have more articles forthcoming. We'll let you know in our Gov Delivery newsletter when those are available. We also have the handout attached to this Aspen event. And If you're still have questions, want to learn more, please open a ticket with us. We would love to hear from you. And I have not been looking at the chat.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, I'm gonna back up and like read the questions aloud for the people who were.
I have been
Perfect.
answering a few of them in chat, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to
Perfect.
review them as well because they are important questions.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank
if
you,
you want
Melody.
to, yeah, if you want to,
Yeah,
Melody,
Amy,
that'd
if
be
you
good,
want
but
me to do that, let me scroll back so I can take a look. So
Yeah.
Kylie, thank you very much. And I also appreciate everyone's time in looking at this because I know it is a change, and in some cases is a change of things that you got used to doing the other way for years. And so I know change can be very challenging, but this is to address all the problems that have been building for multiple years on holds, but also shared record keeping. So even if you're not in a sharing group and are just on your own, these issues can affect you and can affect you when you search or when your students or users search. So it says, are you going to batch move the books we currently have on serial records to individual records? And the answer to that is mostly yes. Sometimes we can't effectively find them, but in most cases we can. We did a pilot with the BridgerNet libraries, which is the Gallatin County libraries, where we moved a whole lot of theirs. I don't think we got them all, but a whole lot of their main manga and other things in series that were sharing records onto their own records. And so there are, in a lot of cases for the popular series, already individual item records in the system that we can transfer to. If you want to transfer your own, you definitely can do that. Just make sure that if they had the bar Z in the call number on the old record, that you're going to want to remove that. The forcing of the bar Z has already been removed, so it will not force a bar Z in there anymore. So you can move them now if you want to, but we will be doing them in batch for you. So if you don't want to take the time or you don't have the time, that's fine. But if you notice some and you want to go ahead and do them, you absolutely can. This is the new recommendation, so you can definitely move forward with doing this. But yes, we're going to continue to clean these up. It is going to be a long project. We have a huge system. We have over 200 libraries. So yes, we will be moving forward to do that for books. For DVDs, we were actually asked by some of the libraries not to do it, in part because if you look at a lot of those television series, there is so much variation in how the call numbers have been done. Some have like a season or S period, number period, disc period. There's all sorts of different things. And so batch changing them, we have a feeling that we would accidentally create more issues rather than fix a lot of those problems because of the variation. Also because DVDs usually have a little bit more of a limited life than books. We do think some of those will sort of just fix themselves over time, but as we see them, we will fix some of them, but we're not going to be batch fixing the DVDs. We will mainly be fixing them when we notice holds issues in the system that are being affected by those problem call numbers. So that's that question. So Abby says, if I understand right, When Calls the Heart is a good example. If it is season 1 and there's discs 1 through 3 and there's a season 1 discs 4 through 6, do we list it that way? And yes, I put into the reply there, if you split that into 2 different parts to circulate so that discs 1 through 3 are circulating together and discs 4 through 6 are circulating together, you would put a bar Z discs space 1-3 for the first one and bar Z discs space 4-6 for the second part. Now here's the tricky thing. If you circulate the entire season together, we do need you to add the full number of discs. And this is because when people go to place a hold and there is no call number analytics and it's on a bib record with things that do have a call number analytics, the only way to select the entire series is by choosing a blank space. And there is no instruction for that and no indication that they need to select the blank space. And so if you have ever been a library that finds your patron has placed a hold on an item they're not allowed to have from another library, that's how they did it. Because all of the call number analytics are all shared, even if the items cannot be shared between the patrons. It is a weird system glitch. And so this is in part why we're making some of these changes. So let me know if you have any additional questions about that one, but yes, you would split up discs 1 through 3 and discs 4 through 6. Is there a way that these sort nicely if the series order is included? Thinking manga, some very, very long. So yes, we are aware that some of the sorting is problematic, and part of that is because they haven't been cataloged consistently. So when we split them out into their own individual records, I've been trying to keep them consistent. And in a lot of cases, when you're at OCLC and looking for a new record, you can see a variety of different options, especially for manga. So you might see 3 or 4 different ways that the title is listed, where it might say, Naruto number 5, Naruto set 5. And you want to choose the one that looks most like the other records in the system. If you have questions about this, or you're finding that they're all sorting except number 7 or something, please put in a ticket and we can investigate, and it might just require us to kind of tinker with the records, find maybe a better record that matches the other titles that we have in for that series. So then they should sort pretty well. Let's see. So if I understand, okay, so that one I answered. Do we need to update TV series with bar Z or not? So if it's an individual disc, no. But if it is a TV series that has more than one disc, yes, you will have a bar Z and the number of discs, even if it is all the discs for all television series, except if there is just one disc. So if they have a, season 1 of MASH and they put it all on one disc, you don't need to add the bar Z and the number of discs because the record only has one disc. It can't be split into parts. Mel has added the link to the knowledge base article. Also, if you haven't looked at it, there is a handout similar to the one that we gave out at MLA if you came to that, but it has new information. So even if you were at the MLA session, please go and get that. So if you go to the Aspen event for this meeting, the PDF is there. There's no good way to add a PDF in our knowledge base, but we might figure out a way to email it in a future GovD maybe. We are also turning a lot of that information into an FAQ on analytics, so you'll see that coming too, and we'll share that. So a lot of our manga seems to have poor series titles if they have one at all, like a published series in there instead of the series name, like Shonen Jump. Will we be putting new series tags in manga? Do we have to do those manually? So we are, as part of creating better records, we will be fixing a lot of that. It is a shared system, so it's going to, again, take some time. So it's going to be a little messy for the short run, but we are absolutely confident that this will improve the findability and the holdability and the movement of things in the system. So bear with us, but yes, we will be including the series titles as well as like the bib titles and the sorting. So should we fix our DVD call numbers or just catalog with the discs in the call number moving forward? The DVD call numbers, you can still have whatever DVD call numbers you want. We are not changing your call numbers. After the bar Z, that's a subfield. So that is the part that has a function. So we don't care what you use for your call numbers, but after the bar Z, we need the number of discs to be consistent. And so, yes, we are asking as you see those and as you have time to fix your DVDs and add the number of discs, because that will make it easier. And that's just for television series. So most of the time, I haven't seen very many of you at all splitting up DVD sets that legitimately come with 2 or 3 DVDs. Like if you have a movie that has 2 DVDs because one is like special features and one is the main film, we usually don't see you guys circulating those separately with 2 different barcodes. I guess if we saw a lot of that and it was causing problems, we could address that. But mostly what we're talking is television seasons, because some of you split them into parts and some of you do not. So that is the main focus. So if you're going to put your efforts anywhere, put it into television series multi-disc sets, and you're just adding bar Z and the number of discs after the bar Z to create a subfield. Amy has linked to the handout. Thank you, Amy. So Deb, I'm not sure with the PDF. So Amy has linked it right above there, so you can click on it from there.
She ended up being able to access it.
Good. Okay. You said if it has its own record, then it does not need bar Z, but also said to put bar Z for entire seasons. So DVDs have a bar Z no matter what. I may have addressed this by just talking about it a little more, but basically, anytime you are cataloging part of something that may not be the entire thing, you need to have the bar Z. And because some people in our system separate DVD seasons into multiple parts and some don't, The only way to avoid people not being able to choose, or the people being able to choose what they want, is to make sure everyone adds the discs. And so, for example, if you do the whole season of The Office and you don't add the bar Z in the number of discs, in order for your patrons to get your copy, they would have to choose the blank space. Haley, can you scroll back up to that picture of the rise and fall of the Roman Empire? Yeah. So do you see where the blue space is at the top there above the volume 1? That's where all of you who have no call number analytics are. There's nothing there. Patrons have to somehow guess to click on the blank space. And as we all know, they're not going to do that. They're going to pick something from the list, right? So they're going to choose something in the list. And if we want them to choose the right thing, then everyone has to add something so that they choose something that exists for them. I hope that makes sense. It's definitely a confusing topic. So it's not just you. It is confusing. And we wish the system had a better way of dealing with it when there wasn't anything listed and there are things on the same record that do have a call number analytic, but this is what we've got. And I can tell you, I've been in other ILS systems and they don't manage it all that much better. So it's not just a SirsiDynix issue either. And then Karen says, so if I have yearbooks and they do not sort in order, is it something wrong with the Z? It possibly could be. So all of your yearbooks, if they're all sharing a record, and most of the time yearbooks do because they don't change year to year. I mean, obviously they have different students, but usually unless there's a name change, like you called it the Colstrip Cougar, and then later they changed their mascot to something else, you would want to have at the end of your call number a bar Z and a 4-digit year for the year of that yearbook. If you don't have a bar Z in there, it may not be sorting correctly for that reason. And occasionally we also see some weird glitches in Cirsi, so there could be other things. So if you are wondering, we can look into it and try and figure it out. But yes, go ahead and submit a ticket if you have any questions. We expect to get a lot of tickets on this issue because it is a big change that we are asking of you guys. But we're hoping this will address a lot of the issues that we spend time fixing. Many of you have had problems where you're like, hey, how did someone place a hold on one of my items when I don't share materials with them? Oh, this person had a hold for almost a year and they didn't get the item even though it's sitting on my shelf. We have a lot of those problems on a regular basis that we're fixing. And this will hopefully be the solution for these problems. I think I've answered all the questions in the chat. Does anyone else have additional questions? We have 5 minutes left. We have managed our time so well. Please share this with your cataloging teams. We know that many of you are not your cataloger, or you do some cataloging, but you aren't the only one. So definitely share. And we also know that this is not going to happen overnight. So some of the things you could do that we can't do for you, or we may not find time to do over time, is your travel guides. We noticed some travel guides going back 20 years. And I just want to tell you that your patrons probably aren't finding some of those as helpful as newer versions. So one thing you could do to help us is weed your travel collections. Because those are things that we don't want to have to transfer to individual records for something from 2008. If you have a newer copy, it might just be time to weed the older one, and then we don't have to transfer those to individual records.
I was going to add, Melody, we won't be batch changing the TV series in mass just because of the different labeling and different. We don't want to break anything for anyone for those. But if you have done it consistently and you just want us to switch things for you, like if you're using the letter V now and you just want us to switch the word discs for you, open a ticket and we can do that kind of work for you.
That's a good point. And yes, we can totally do that. Also, in general, most of you are Dewey libraries, but just a reminder that if you are one of our special libraries or one of our academics and you use a different call number scheme, this will not affect you as much. And you probably don't have as much of the material that it would affect anyway, because you're not having a lot of manga and other things at like the Department of Transportation, for example. So those libraries use different call number schema. And so we do not, we won't be batch changing or fixing a lot of those. You guys are in your own little world there.
Also, if you are using Dewey for everything, the Dewey class scheme for everything now, and you want to use the Dewey per class scheme for your magazines going forward, so the pipe Z will automatically fill in, we can batch change that for your existing magazines also.
Yes. And Kylie didn't mention it, but something that I absolutely love about this is if you have been in the system a long time and you've noticed that sometimes you add certain author names and it automatically forces in a bar Z even though you don't want it. Like, for example, any author with the last name May. The system was recognizing May and the date as being a month and year and was forcing an analytic in there, even though the author's name was May. And there was literally no way to fix that. Or if they had WIN abbreviated from an author's last name, it was thinking that was winter and was forcing in the bar Z. So that is done now, which is just lovely. Denise, I will take a look at Doctor Who. I have a big long list of things I'm fixing and I do a few a day. So what we can't fix in batch, I will try my best to kind of tinker with and see. Do you mean, so the new series, the old series, or do you have like a specific, or I'll just take a look. I'll take a look.
This one, as things get separated onto different records, we do, it might not be noticeable, but we do expect there to be a slight increase in performance, because what we have seen is some of the bib records that have multiple hundreds of items on them, they load much more slowly in workflows. I don't know if they load more slowly in enterprise, but as we'll be separating these apart, those records will load a bit faster in workflows.
Thank you. Man, are we going to finish literally right on time, guys? Amy, do we have anything else on the agenda, or was this it?
We do not. We have just the public comment. If there's any public comment anybody wants to say or put in the chat, but otherwise we are doing good on time. Thank you everybody for attending. It's really important, you know, that it's a member-led consortium, and so we want the members to have input.
Thank all of you for coming and showing up.